with these spaces, whether it's industrial, flex, retail, any of these, right? The tenants, they improve your space. You're not improving it yourself, right? Because they're running a business out of it. So they need to improve their facility looks like for their consumer. Because if they're going to have a crappy looking place, their customers are not coming to them.
If you're not conscious about your investment strategy, you won't end up where you want to be, not financially or as a human. On this show, we interview highly successful investors and share how they overcame limitations to become unstoppable forces of success. If you're ready to learn what it is to be a conscious investor so you can end up where you want, keep listening.
Conscious investor, welcome back. I am so grateful to have you here as a listener. And you know what? I would love to invite you to support the show in a very, very simple way. It's so simple and it will take you less than 30 seconds. So wherever you are, will you just scroll on down and leave an honest review? You know, you don't even have to leave a rating, but if you just leave an honest review, total bonus if you do leave a written review, because that just, I read them and that it just totally. And the questions, hey, I'd love to hear more about, let me know, because I am in such a lovely spot that I can, reach out and bring guests on that will serve and support you in powerful ways. Speaking of serving and supporting you in powerful ways, I am so excited to have Rinku here in the house, in the Conscious Investor house, because she invests in a lot of different capacities. And I haven't ever discussed really commercial real estate with the conscious investor community. And I think that this is going to serve you well, because it's really important to understand there are a lot of different ways that we can invest in funds and through syndications. And through that, we can be investing in apartment complexes or RV parks or mobile home parks, but we can also be investing in actual commercial real estate. And when most people say that, they're thinking, oh, well, didn't you just talk? Yes, those are considered commercial, but now let's talk about commercial in another capacity and really expand your thinking upon that. But before we go down there, Rinku, so happy to have you on the show.
I am thrilled to be on your show, and thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. I was speaking with your brother-in-law, Ash, and it was so much fun. I've been on his show. He's been on my show, and he and I met at Best Ever last year. By the way, by the time this comes out, Conscious Investor, you missed it. So buy your ticket for the next Best Ever in 2024. You don't want to miss the event. It's fantastic. But all that to say, he and I have had some really great conversations about different asset classes, and you invest together and support investors. So tell me about what you were investing in that might be a little bit different than the multifamily asset that so many people hear about.
So we do, particularly, I kind of started out doing in flex space, and then kind of moved on to doing medical buildings and started doing retail strip centers. And then now we've also added industrial buildings as well. So kind of like a little example what a flex building might be is if someone's not familiar with that, it's basically metal buildings. They have garage doors. They also have a typical glass door where your customer can enter through, but then they provide services like, a window tint place. It could be a plumbing business. It could be an electrical business. It could be, any of those businesses that are required to have their staff come in to grab equipment or materials in the morning, and then they leave for jobs. Then they come back to check back in with the office staff. And typically in those type of spaces, office spaces are a lot smaller, because they use majority of that space for materials and to park their trucks in there. So they'll have probably their billing department and their front of the house staff, which would be just 2 or 3 people, for that business. So that's pretty much what a flex space really looks like if you're looking at that. And the industrial is more like, on a larger scale. similar to flex, they're pretty much very similar when you talk about the material that is made of metal buildings, and they're larger, and they could house like a flooring business, which, they would have tons and tons of different types of carpet or flooring material. So, that's what industrial is. And the location of these spaces are pretty much really not mainstream, not an A-level real estate, right? They're kind of hidden. They're in back of a retail where it's cheap, land is cheap and they can build it cheaply there. And businesses, because a consumer does not need to find those businesses, that's why they can afford to be in a C-level real estate location.
Okay, this is such a great breakdown of those two, assets, and I absolutely love it. Industrial is something that Three Keys Investments has not ventured into, but is like just always learning more about, because we know we want to bring in different asset classes into the investment portfolio. Now, when you look at these different types of assets that you guys are investing in, some of the questions that I can hear the conscious investor asking would be like, okay, well, what if the flooring business goes out? Like, how stable? I mean, after all, everyone in multifamily investing says everyone needs a roof over their head. So, where is that level? Because I'm not going to even front load it because I'm like, I'm not going to answer that question. It's your question. But how is that, when it comes to stability, what does that look like?
So, very similar to, you looking at a short-term or a multi-tenant leasing, right? You would look at the same scenario, but you look at it at a different level of saying, okay, for instance, you're going to analyze that tenant as far as you're going to look at their financials. You're going to look at how long they've been in business for. You're going to look at their business financials as well. You're going to get a personal guarantee on that lease as well. So you have measures that you do take into place before you lease out that space to them. And then, as always, things go wrong, and they have gone wrong, right? There have been so many businesses that go under, and those are just certain risks that you can limit if you're going to pre-qualify your tenant before leasing out those spaces.
I love that. Okay. Personal guarantee. Does that mean they're going to have to pay? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So personal guarantee, which means is there's a couple different ways, right? So for instance, what you can do is when you review their finances, they'll provide a personal financial statement is what I require. I also require 3 to 6 months of their bank statements. I want to see a liquid in their bank account. Right. And then I kind of say, all right, if this is a location you're just relocating to, I want to see your business financials as well. I want to see what that cash flow is. And if this is something you can support and you can, you have enough finances to move into this space. And then basically, if they are able to capture, anywhere from 10 to 15% of their revenue, allocate that towards rent, then I consider that they're going to be able to support that business moving into this new location. Now, personal guarantee it's a guarantee that they are liable for that full term of the lease or whatever they've negotiated, right? Typically, for me, it's for the full term. So let's say a business goes out of business within the first 2 years, and they've got 3 years remaining left. And if they owe me $5,000 a month for the next 3 years, they have a few different options, right? One is I will negotiate with them any lease break fee, right? So we'll come up with a number. It's a mutual release of the lease, and for a certain amount of dollar, pretty much. That's one option. Second option, if they're playing hard to get, and they're like, well, I'm just shutting my business down. I'm not going to pay you anything. So what that personal guarantee does is that it protects you, and you're allowed to go after them on their personal finances. So for instance, they could have a house, right? That it's free and clear. You could actually put a lien on that house. So when they go to sell that house, you're going to get paid before anybody else, before that person gets paid from those proceeds from the house. And then it goes the same thing. If they have a bank account or savings account, you can literally, go after those funds based on the personal guarantee.
So conscious investor, if that doesn't sound like a little bit of, little certainty right there. I mean, that's a really nice, element to investing in these different spaces, is that it sounds like there are a variety of ways to mitigate the risk on that side. What are some of the other, risks involved in, say, the flex or the industrial? And if we'll tackle the other part, we'll tackle shopping centers in a minute. But what are some of the other, associated risks, and how can the conscious investor, if they're reviewing a deal in this, space, what should they be looking for? What risks should they be looking for, and how are they to be mitigated?
Okay.
I think I asked that.
Yeah. No. So if they're looking at a deal, right, and let's just look at industrial or flex space in particular, because they're not at a prime real estate location, right? You want to make sure whatever area you're looking at for industrial, you want to have a good location where it's off the interstate. It's off of a busy interstate where whoever is going to occupy that space, their, staff can come in and get out, right? Get on the interstate. If they're going from one state to another, if they're shipping product from one state to another, that's a lot easier to fill if you are close to any interstates. Airports matter if you're closer to an airport. And that's why you'll see a lot of the industrial spaces around airports or around major interstates within any, given state. Those are the biggest thing to look for. They are going to be a lot cheaper because they lease out a lot cheaper than what a typical retail space would lease out for. So for instance, if a retail space in an area leases out for $15 a square foot, this would be more like $5, $6 per square foot.
Dang. So the returns then going to be pretty sweet.
They would be, because industrial space would be a 50,000 square feet, right? So you're taking 50,000 square feet times $5 a square foot, compared to a retail space, you're leasing it out to a tenant, let's just say 2,000 square feet at $15. So you still make a lot more money with the industrial, but you're just not in a prime location. You just have to put on a different hat to evaluate each asset class and each type of tenant you're going to have in between both of those two properties.
That is really interesting. Are the tenants, are they more, in your experience, I mean, you've been doing this a while, are they more stable in the flex and industrial space versus, the strip malls and such?
Definitely. Yeah. I definitely see more stable tenants with industrial and flex space compared to retail, just because retail are more, as a lot of them are owned by mom and pop places or franchise businesses. However, the franchise businesses are not guaranteed by the franchisor, their leases. So, again, you're dealing with a smaller person that could be their first business. That could be, they're just starting out, or that's something that, they've so-called worked in a restaurant, but now they want to start their own restaurant. So they have no prior business experience. So risks are higher. However, they're the easiest to lease out because they are in front of people, right? They're at a high traffic intersections or on a high traffic road. So those are a lot easier to lease out, and they do lease out a lot quicker typically.
Okay. Oh, gosh. Okay. This is fun because, just being able to ask these type of questions, a conscious investor is like exploring so many different options on investing. And as I mentioned, I mean, we haven't gone down this rabbit hole. What is an exit strategy? If they're reviewing a deal, what kind of exit strategy should they be looking for on, let's just stick with industrial and flex?
Okay, so it all depends on what type of property they're buying, right? If they're purchasing a value add, which means is that throw out an example. They're purchasing a 7,000 square feet flex building, which has 3 tenants. But that building is pretty much only, let's say, 25% lease. That's going to be considered a value add because they're going to add a value by bringing in the 2 tenants. So they're going to lease out with the 2 tenants. So they're kind of going to get it a little cheaper than what it would cost them if it was fully leased and they have fully executed lease.
Mm-hmm.
So if they have a value add, for typically me, if I have a value add property, I would do an exit strategy at 5 years, because that will give me an opportunity to recoup all of the cash that I've invested on that property. Typically look for cash on cash return, about 25% going into a deal. By the time I'm ready to exit, my cash on cash with the leases in place would be around 40-50%. And then I pretty much have tripled my value of the property because I have these leases in place. When I go to dump it, and give you an example, my first ever property I bought was a flex building, bought it for $400K, lost a couple of tenants in the process of due diligence, and I leased it out before I was able to close on the property. And going to sell that property, it's worth around $1.2 million right now.
Not so bad, huh?
No, not really.
Do you find that that some of the work, and when I think about, multifamily, and you think about, paint, carpet, cabinets, it's the exterior, the interior, there's a lot of cosmetics and, maybe major overhauls on electrical. Like when I think about that, and then I'm hearing you talk about these spaces, it's kind of like, how much really needs to get done? It sounds like instead of a bunch of cosmetics, it's bring in the right tenant for that.
Yeah, actually, it's
space.
A lot easier. It is so much easier than multifamily. I get people asking me that, isn't it difficult? Or, they're scared of this commercial part of it because they don't understand it, right? Mm-hmm. But matter of fact, with these spaces, whether it's industrial, flex, retail, any of these, right? The tenants, they improve your space. You're not improving it yourself, right? Because they're running a business out of it. So they need to improve their, whatever their facility looks like for their consumer. Because if they're going to have a crappy looking place, their customers are not coming to them. Mm-hmm. So they take care of your property. So it's totally different than multifamily. In multifamily, because people don't own those homes, they destroy it, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, it's actually the opposite, that they don't destroy, they actually improve your property.
That's amazing. And then you'd have less tenants to be managing as well. So
absolutely, you have a lot less tenants to manage. They're longer term. You've vetted out their finances. You've got a personal guarantee on their lease. So you have measures in place for them to be there longer period of time.
Conscious investor, you can see there's a reason why I'm like, this is something you need to know about, because as much as I love multifamily, it's important. And we talk about this often, like we need to be expanding our minds. We need to be understanding, instead of being pigeonholed into one type of thinking or one asset class or one, like at least just be aware. And it doesn't mean you have to run off necessarily and invest, but be aware and start looking at those, become familiar, get yourself familiarized with these different asset classes so that you can feel comfortable making a decision to maybe like, I just need to try that. I went full cycle. I need to put this money someplace. Let me try this in addition to multifamily.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there are so many funds out there that do offer retail or industrial or flex space syndication deals, right? And if your listeners are really looking to get some education, go on Crexy, go on LoopNet, pull up some deals, just call the broker, download the OM, just learn it that way. Those are some basic ways to just get some information on a property for you to get basics. So when you are ready to invest in these deals, as you can break down what the fund is offering or what a syndication deal is really offering.
Really, really important. So can we shift gears for a second? And can we talk about retail?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, because I'm going to be very candid. Conscious investor, you're so used to this already. I'm so gun shy when it comes to retail. And I think that that's something that maybe, it's just, you hear people talk and it's like retail sounds so scary. It sounds so nerve wracking. And, you drive down the road and you see that vacancy sign for a period of time and you're like, oh, I don't know about that retail. And then I just also remember when I worked at a sporting goods shop, I remember taking the rent check to the office. And that rent check would be, 40 something $1,000. And that was just for one of the stores in this retail area. And they had some vacancies, but I know well, if we're doing 40 and they're doing this, they're going to be, you could kind of start gauging it. So it's like, it's obviously lucrative. People don't quit on the whole retail space. Let's demystify this and you can calm me down a bit, maybe. Conscious investor, you can get the byproduct of that if you're feeling the same way.
Yeah, so that's actually my favorite asset class is retail, because it is, there's so many different aspects to retail, and I have number of those, right? I have something that's coming up from ground up, where we bought the land and we're building our own buildings. I've got something that we've already built new buildings. I've got something that we have an existing retail centers that we've purchased. So I've got a mixture of all of it. And the best thing about all of those is that, again, they're smaller spaces, right? Each space is 1,500 to 2,000 square feet maximum. So in an example, I've got a 22,000 square feet building, and I've got 8 to 9 tenants in there right now. And, even if I lose 1, 2 tenant, 3 tenant, I'm still okay, because I've still got all the other tenants paying for everything that they need to pay, right? Which covers my mortgage. Then there's a charge called CAM, which is common area maintenance. So that portion of it, each tenant pays that again, and it gets broken down by how much square feet they lease, which covers the trash, which covers the landscaping, which covers the taxes, which covers property management, and it covers any, parking lot repairs, maintenance, and everything. So pretty much these tenants are not only paying my mortgage, they're paying complete management, every single expense that has to do with the whole property.
Okay, that sounds too good to be true, right? I mean, that's really cool.
No, that's actually true. That's why I said this is like my favorite asset class, even though, I'm not worried about it. And I do, in this 21,000 square feet, we had a tenant that we were not going to renew their lease because they had a lease that was 10 years old and they were paying way below market rate. And we just weren't going to renew because the rents have almost tripled. So we're like,
wow.
We'll just wait. We're going to get the right tenant in it. And that's what we're doing right now. So I'm okay losing that money because I know I'm replacing that space, the 2 spaces, with triple the amount of rent that I'm going to generate.
Wow. Okay. What's the exit strategy look on that?
So I actually was ready that property I bought it about 2 years ago. I was going to make this final change, and we painted the building. It was this old red brick building with green canopies. We changed out the canopy. We painted the whole building like a dark gray, white, black trim kind of.
Oh, wow. Looks classy.
In the process, last year, Netflix is coming right across the street from us. They are building a 40-acre production studio. Yes. And right behind our property, we have about an acre lot. And then right behind that lot, we have about 150 duplex homes coming. So I do not want to sell. I actually want to develop that acre and put another building there.
Wow. And add more retail to serve the residents that are going to be living there.
Yes.
Put in your nail place, what are you going to put in? What would
So I've got a couple salons already in the front. So I don't, nail salon is a possibility because I do not have a nail salon there. I was looking at a package store, which they will take up about 6,000 square feet.
Wait, what's about, we get, that's lingo that a multifamily investor doesn't know. A package store?
Yeah, package store is a liquor store pretty much.
Oh, those are great packages.
Alcohol, yeah.
Okay, that's a great store. I approve of this. Okay, my husband.
Everybody needs that.
My husband loves making craft cocktails, and I always joke, but I'm really not joking, that we do need to own some type of alcohol store, like a liquor shop or something. Not for us, but I mean, like it just, in every single economy, it weathers the storm quite well. Now, I happen to live in a state. I would have to do that out of state, just as a fun aside, because in the state of Idaho, all the liquor stores are state run. And so,
really?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I learned that recently. And so they actually have an inventory and they can see where the green chartreuse is in the entire state and order it and bring it up from whatever store. But they're actually state employees.
Wow. I did not know that.
Oh, I'm glad I got to bring something new to your world today too. Okay. So you bring, are there other types of package stores, or does that generally refer to like liquor stores?
Yep. That just refers to liquor stores.
Is that just supposed to be like, people aren't supposed to say the liquor store or something? Like, is that prohibition?
It's a better way.
Okay. I'm going to just start telling my husband, are you going to the package store? Okay. So, you'd consider bringing a package store in, maybe a nail salon. What other things would you consider for that type of setup?
I could have a restaurant in there. I typically do not like to bring restaurants in my centers. And the reason is a couple of things, right? When you look at a retail center, then bring a restaurant in, one, it creates a lot of mess back of the house, back of the building, the trash that's taken out and everything with the food. Rodents are an issue. Our own trash area sometimes. The fact that, the amount of tenant improvement that is required. And once they modify that space, I can only lease it out to a restaurant once they're gone. So that does, that kind of, I don't like it, but I don't mind. If it's a great concept, then I would do it. If they have a track record, if they have the experience, if they have the financials, then I would do it. But anything, somebody new, I would not do a restaurant with.
Would you have to, if you were building, would you have to put a grease trap down below?
So all my buildings, we do. Any buildings that we do ground up, we put 2 grease traps in, one on each end. So it's in the future when we go to sell it, that's a plus for the next owner of the building.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. And you got to get I would not have thought about the trash. This is just a very enlightening conversation. And I just, conscious investor, I know you're probably enjoying this as much as I am, because these are things, again, we always want to think about our thinking. And these are things I would not have thought about: the amount of trash attracting rodents. I did think about the build out space, because now you're maybe adding, in part of the agreement, some commercial kitchen or, equipment and such. So maybe a coffee shop. I mean, I love my coffee. So I don't know. I'm voting to bring a coffee shop in. I'm kidding. But this is absolutely exciting and so interesting to be able to just like venture into, better understanding some of these. Let's do what we did with, the flex in the industrial space for just a moment and say, okay, the conscious investor is looking at somebody's offering and it's a fund like the fund that you have. And wow, there's retail in it. What are some of the risks that they should be looking for? And then what would be the way they're mitigated?
So a couple of them could be, one could be a risk, the way they look at it, right? Of who the tenant mix is. Right. If these are tenant mix that we know have tendency to go out of business a lot quicker. For example, if there's a stationery place, right, in a strip center. Nowadays, who goes to a stationery store to buy letterhead paper envelopes? No one, right? I mean, that business is only going to survive so long, certain things like that. So you want to look at who the tenants are. If you're looking at a strip center that has some high-end tenants like Chipotle, Panera, Subway, those are all great tenants. They all have signed some of them, if they're franchised, they've signed a 10-year agreement with the franchisor. So that they're going to be there 10 years.
Nice.
Another thing that, people think it's a risk, but I don't consider as a risk, especially not in this market. Since COVID, I don't consider that as a risk, is leases. People think that, hey, there's this fund, they're offering this retail center, but all their leases expire in 2 years or 3 years. I look at that as a positive, because then if those leases are below market, that's an opportunity for you to just increase that rent and increase that cash flow after 2 years or 3 years. So I definitely look at it as far as saying, okay, what is the market rate? Where are they at? And what is their term?
Yeah. And, even in the multifamily side, we consider, okay, we're going to have turnover, and turnover isn't bad necessarily, because, okay, well, great. Now we're bringing that unit up to market rent very quickly, very easily. So yeah, the same would hold true. Interesting. Anything else that we should know about the retail space?
Oh, there's a lot. What do you want to learn on it?
There is. There's so much. It seems like a lot of fun. And you and I, when we spoke on the phone a couple months ago, I mean, I could hear the joy, like you're enthusiastic about it. And so anytime I am speaking with someone and it's like, oh my gosh, this person loves what they do. And so that to me is always an indicator. There's got to be something magical, because most people don't totally love what they do, but like you're enthusiastic and you're, you can tell it brings you joy.
I didn't love it always, because, and a great, I guess it's not an excuse, but a story behind it is I had several single tenant retail buildings in 2004. 2003 is when I purchased them. So 2003, 2004. And when 2007, 2008 came around, I lost those tenants. And since these retail buildings only had one tenant each, they were fast food, I wasn't able to release those spaces.
Oh, wow.
So I lost all the real estate, and I ended up filing for bankruptcy. So that was a turnoff for me for a minute, until, kind of coming back to it and saying, you know what, this is what I want to do actually.
How did you decide to come back to it? Because there are investors that are listening right now and they got hit hard, and they're like, I don't know. You're listening because you want to invest, but you're still feeling gun shy. So what sent you over the edge?
The first few years were very tough, because I had two little kids at the time. I had a 3-year-old and 1-year-old when I lost everything meaning,
oh my
home
gosh.
and everything in that, right? So starting all over out again, I guess, my thing was, all right, back in 2003, there weren't all these podcasts. There weren't all these material on the internet for you to understand, to learn, and, figure things out that way, right? Or speak to someone on that. Since then, a lot has changed. And not only that, I picked up a job doing mergers and acquisition for a firm, and they were pretty much in a house building environment, and that's what they would buy out. And I analyzed all of these properties for them. I analyzed the businesses and everything. And, I kind of just went back to it and said, you know what, I'm doing this for somebody else, and these businesses and these properties are doing amazing. I've learned a lot. I just need to go back and do it for myself. And kind of just said, you know what, let me just start small, and just took off from there.
What a cool story. A super cool story. Because I think that a lot of times people, I know people, I'm sure you do too, who lost the shirt off their back, and they're still not back in the investing space. And we can get smacked down in any part of our life. But we can also get back on the horse and we can ride again, and we will ride smarter.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And the good thing is I think about it now and I say to myself is I'm so glad that happened to me in my 20s, right? Because later on, I think now would be a lot tougher if I was to lose everything. And, yeah, life always isn't perfect. Things are always going to go wrong. It's about how you're going to pick up and just move on.
Absolutely. Gosh. Okay. We got to move on because we're going to come up on time. I knew this was going to happen, which is why I'm like, we got to hit record. We just got to jump in. So let's talk about, you have a mastermind.
Yes.
Let's talk about that, because I love opportunities that just support people in learning and growing.
Absolutely. So started a mastermind, and basically, I have a partner in that as well. And we pretty much teach, somebody that's got their feet wet a little bit in the real estate market. So they're not pretty novice to it. So we take them on for 16 weeks. We do once a week Zoom call. It's about 2.5 to 3 hours Zoom call. And we start from the basics of commercial real estate. We cover different asset classes. We give them some of our proprietary material on pretty much spreadsheets, how to break down a deal, how to evaluate a deal, how to add value to a deal, purchase and sales agreements, some leases, things like that support that we provide. And then what we also do is we'll assign 2 students per week. We give them a little questionnaire. They go out and find a property. It could be any property. They answer those questions themselves and present it to the class. So we basically try to teach them by us showing them. We let them do homework on a property so they get to learn how it's done. And then when they present it, maybe that's a third way of them showing it to somebody else in the group of, hey, this is how I found it. This is what I looked for. This is how you can look for. So we try to cover the 3 different ways someone can learn on commercial real estate. And then we also provide, like, let's say, they don't have to wait for a whole week if they have a deal. They give us a call or call us up and say, hey, I've got this great deal. Can we jump on a call? And we pretty much help them, get it under contract as soon as possible if it's a good deal.
I just have to say, as a former public school teacher of elementary kids, you followed the model of, I do it, we do it, you do it. But there's a sequence and it works, right? We have to have our role model. We have to have some time in the sandbox playing and trying together in a safe way. And then we can go off and we can do it ourselves and present it and learn. That's a fantastic model.
Oh, yeah. And then we've got students in the past 1.5 years. We've had students bring us deals, right, live. And then it's such a good deal where we've had other students jump on it. And I'll give you an example. We had one guy who got a $2 million land deal. Actually, he needed to raise $2 million. He had never raised money. He didn't know how to do it. He first joined the mastermind to say, hey, this is a deal I'm buying, one deal I'm buying, and then I'm done because I'm going to quit my job and I'm just going to live off of that. Well, from the class, he kind of got hooked onto it. And then he found this deal. The entire class pretty much raised his entire $2 million for him because they all jumped in on that. So from that, he's now, I think, on his 4th property at this point. But, it just gave them a self-confidence of saying, you don't need to have a huge network. If the deal is good, people will come and they'll invest in it.
That's really cool. Oh my gosh. I love it. This has just been so much fun getting to know you. We didn't, when we met over the phone, it was over the phone and I was out walking. And I remember it was a great conversation, but it's really lovely just to be able to actually have a conversation and to benefit the conscious investor just so that they can look at there are other opportunities and we don't have to just stay in one sandbox. We can go and play on other parts of the playground and it's safe.
Absolutely.
I love it. Rinku, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you and to learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah, they can check us out on our website, which is investbeyondmultifamily.com. Hence kind of gives it away of saying we do nothing with unit. It's all commercial real estate. We also have, our Instagram at CRE Women Mastermind. They can, or Facebook CRE Women Mastermind.
Love it. Make sure that you share this around, and don't be shy about learning about. Make sure you go and check out their website and connect up with Rinku. Conscious Investor, you are awesome. Rinku, thank you again for coming on this show and just serving us so powerfully.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast.
Well, that makes it an A+ show for today. Conscious Investor, remember, adventure belongs on the trail, not in your investing and not in your personal life. So if you need support with your investing, knowing, hey, I need to grow this part of my finances, or you need some support personally through high performance coaching, please make sure you schedule a time to talk with me. Go to 3keysinvestments.com and you can hop on my calendar there. Until next time, live big, love bigger, and do great things. What's the big deal about investing in apartments? Why is it better than investing in a slew of single-family homes? I've compiled a lot of information on why investing in a multifamily, also known as apartments, will help you reach your investment goals. Head over to 3keysinvestments.com and download the Why Invest in Multifamily guide today.